Kenyans can relate to it on the ground, because sometimes when we speak about climate change, you know, people always imagine it's so far from, you know, what we're doing right now. So we have a question of the day. We are asking you, how can young people turn climate change challenges into opportunities? How can young people turn climate change challenges into opportunities? And we are talking about climate change and the opportunities for the youth. Climate change and the opportunities for the youth. Our social media handles are right there on your screens. On Facebook, that is at K24 TV. On X, at K24 TV. And of course, our WhatsApp line is right there on your screens. Right, so Sam, this is a wide conversation. So let's just start from the most basic aspect. What is climate change?
Wow, I think that's a very good question to begin with. For me, like in the most simplest terms, when looking at climate change, is all about, you know, the changing patterns in weather. That means that, especially when we look at Kenya, look at the change from having like high intense floods to having high intense droughts. So those changes that are happening in the climate and environment is, you know, called the climate change, which happens because the world is warming because of the greenhouse gases, right? Which means that it's affecting the weather patterns, the ocean cycles, how rain comes, you know, how long the droughts are. It's making the world warmer and hotter. Therefore, it's about all those different things from my scientific aspect of how the temperature is going, you know, higher and higher. You know, even in Nairobi, we're experiencing hotter days or colder days and such things. So that's the most basic explanation of climate change. So we're seeing a shift in the weather patterns, which are happening not only in Kenya, but around the whole globe.
Right. Now, it's been over 200 years, and our world is, let me say, it's taking a turn for the worst. I don't want to be a doomsday sayer, but, you know, that's how it's looking right now. And especially in Nairobi, we've had the floods, which disrupted a lot in infrastructure, education, food security, and the like. So when it comes to you as a young people, as a young person rather, how have you seen the destruction affecting your lives?
I mean, I think, as you said it before, like climate change is something that's so real. And I think for so long, people have thought it's a concept for someone out there and like other people.
Actually, the West mostly.
Yeah, the West, right? And it's like their problem and whatnot. But of course, it's been happening over the years. And I think, you know, it's a process that began like, you know, in the industrialization ages, you know, with the emissions. But now it's like when you're feeling the effects, and like each year it's getting worse and worse, you know. Because now, as you mentioned, like recently, early in the year, we had the floods, you know. And of course, that affects you from different angles, from your mental health as a person. You know, every day you're seeing all this news of people getting washed away. People are having landslides. They wake up, their houses are gone, you know. People can't go to school. I remember my cousin was, you know, home for like weeks because they can't go to school because parents are scared to take their kids to school because you don't know, would your child's bus flood away, you know. And even with the floods, we saw the poor infrastructure that we have. Are we even prepared to, you know, handle all that water that's coming? You see, like the town was flooding all the day. You know, you go to town, people are with gumboots, you know. Yeah. So these small inconveniences are happening, and it shows you the fact that climate change is not a far-fetched concept. It's here with us right now. We are experiencing it each and every single day in different facets, you know. So therefore, it makes it more real. You know, it's not something that, hey, it's for other people, it's for us. And that's why we as young people must now take our space, you know, because it's happening as we speak, you know. Right.
You know, one of the things that is quite, you know, interesting is we always relate the economy, and sometimes almost subconsciously we do not see how climate change comes in and adversely affects that, right? Because if you cannot, you know, grow food in a healthy way and it's getting washed away, or you have insane drought, all that will affect the way your, you know, the economy is, the way you're living, like you said, your mental health and the like, right? So are we at a place where young people are so aware of these effects, and now they're doing, you know, more things to help the environment be better?
I think it's a bit of both. I feel like, as you mentioned before, when we talk about climate change and being sustainable, we normally have this thing we call the 3 Ps, about people, planet, and profits. Which people is about, you know, caring about the people, the planet is about the planet, and profits about the economic part. So over time, we have seen the fact that people are prioritizing their profits, which means like they want to build industries, build economies, cut down trees, clear land to build factories, they're emitting. However, they don't understand the fact that without an environment, which is like the foundation, all these things are meaningless and pointless, right? Because if you're not able to conserve your environment, then even your economic growth is going to become, you know, inherent and not possible. So I see young people are slowly by slowly trying to see the interlinkages between climate and the economic opportunities as well. Because if you don't see those two and how they link, you're working in 2 different silos, because now you're fighting 2 different battles. So I think slowly by slowly we're seeing that, you know, immersion in the interlinkages between like the economic aspect and climate change. However, I feel like there's still so much more to be done, because until everyone plays their part and everyone is actually aware, it's all a mess. You know, we always say we don't want to leave no man behind, you know, And that's the whole principle, because in this battle, if I'm fighting against climate change, if you're here out there fighting against me, you know, it's like a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
We won't move.
Yeah.
So unless we're all moving together and be able to actually, you know, we're reading from the same script and seeing how that if we're able actually to have a very clean environment, you know, and we are reducing the impact of climate change, we can actually grow economically. As you talked about, let me give the example of food production, you know. If we're able to, let's say, conserve our environment, you know, be able to plant more trees and conserve our natural soils and everything, that means we can actually grow and probably produce a lot more food, which in turn yield, you know, higher crops, you know, people actually, you know, get access to cheaper foods, we're able to export more. There's so many opportunities, but now when climate comes and floods come, everything goes away. And I think we saw that during May, April, that farmers lost a lot of their, you know, their goods and their produce. So, yeah.
You know, when it comes to playing, you know, your part in all this conversation, you find that some people cannot seem to relate. What part am I supposed to, you know? Basically, because you see, climate change is it's supposed to be a terminology that is supposed to be hitting home.
Yes.
But with the way we've been having the conferences like the COP28, we'll be having COP29, the conversations in regards what is supposed to happen. So people just don't seem to understand, you know, why are these people using such big terminologies and words to tell me what I'm supposed to do, but how does that relate to me? So it becomes a them thing and not an all of us thing. So people are not able to take part rather. So what's your perspective on this thing?
I mean, it's definitely hard. It's some of the things we kind of face because, you know, us who are in advocacy and engaging people, it's hard to kind of help someone understand what happens over here and you are like together, you know, and that's, we call it something called localization, which is like trying to kind of make these issues feel local, feel like you can relate to them, you know. And it's what we do in terms of going out to the communities, translating stuff to different languages, you know, because the system in itself is kind of, it was made in a way that kind of excludes people. You know, the words are hard. You know, it's nice you go to a UN meeting or conference, you hear so many acronyms like this, like that. Just they're like, okay, now where do I go? You know, what do I search? You know, so sometimes
carbon credits.
Yeah, you know, you hear carbon credits.
How are you going to sell carbon credits? So like, excuse me, you know, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
You know?
So I feel like if we take that intentional step of like actually trying to bridge that divide between us versus them, but I think also right now, maybe in a good way, once people are feeling this effect, they kind of realize that it's actually real, and actually they are part of the conversation, because until you experience the effects of climate change also personally at your own level, you can never know it's real. You know, you can feel like it's not a me problem, you know. And I think that's what's happening right now, slowly by slowly. When people actually experience the flood and so, okay, it's actually happening to me, it changes the conversation, you know. It becomes, okay, it's a me problem, it's about me. So I think people also have to kind of be aware around themselves and see, okay, fine, yes, it can be a far-fetched concept, but how do you see it around yourself? You know, is it, you know, how you access goods and services? How do you know your infrastructure at home? You know, what's the air that you breathe every single day? You know, is it clean? Is it safe? So I think that work of trying to make it seem more human and more real is what we try to do. Therefore, people can actually take the ownership, you know, because until there's ownership, it should always become a them conversation, and me, I'm here, and I'm okay, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we had the Paris conversation, the agreement from 2015.
Yes.
We've also seen the president having efforts to plant trees.
Yeah.
Right? Like making sure this is a time when this will be the day everyone in Kenya will have to, you know, plant a tree. There's so many things that are being done in regards to moving the climate change conversation forward. But like I still go back to the point I said, we need to highlight what those changes are. What for example, from the agreement, every nation agreed that their country will be able to, you know, move towards conserving environment and the like. But on the ground, in Kenya specifically, has that been done when you attend those conferences? Have you seen changes so far?
I mean, let me just say this. I think for you look at the conferences, it's definitely a hard thing because they're politically driven. Right? And we know working with government at times can be, it takes time. Even before the Paris Agreement came to forth, it took a lot of diplomacy and lobbying. But the thing is, I'll say there's progress, but it's not enough. You know, our actions need to be, you know, greater, you know, because of like the crisis is worsening. So in Kenya, for example, the tree planting is great, but we just don't want to plant trees, we want to grow the trees. Because, you know, you can plant trees, but they don't grow, right? And it's about how do you sustain the action? So the thing is, like,
I know, because, you know, Nairobi is becoming a concrete, or rather is a concrete jungle. There's structures going everywhere. And that's a concern for me, because, I mean, if we're supposed to plant trees and you see structures coming up left and right in Nairobi, we're not going into the green economy as the way we're supposed to. So is that part of the conversation? It's hot. It's a hot conversation.
It's getting hot in here. I think, you know, when we talk about urbanization, it's about, especially for Africa, it's like we have a demand to grow the population, right? But then you still want to conserve the environment, you know? Where is that interplay? I think that's why things like proper planning comes into play. Like, how is Nairobi County planning its city in terms of allocated areas for green spaces? These are places where there's just trees and, you know, open spaces for parks and everything, vis-a-vis buildings for apartments. Because, again, if you keep on, again, having this concrete jungle, you're also harming the environment as well. You're not creating space for people to actually enjoy free air. There's overpollution, you know, both in terms of your air and your water. So I think, for me, maybe let's say the political will is not strong enough, because if you have strong political will to be able to actually push some of this commitment, you know, because when they talk in this conference, they're all just commitment, they're words, you know. It now takes let's say a governor or a president to come and say, okay, fine, I've taken these words, let me come and actually implement them and actually put money and put time and put experts to actually push these narratives. Because I think agreements have been made before. It's nothing new. Everybody knows it's a climate crisis. You know, everybody knows. But it's so hard because you're like, okay, if you know it, why are we not seeing as much, you know, tangible action that can actually be said this is sustainable? People are taking steps, but they're not really sustainable because we can't see them. We can't see how they're going to last, you know, like the tree planting. Now we need to move from tree planting to tree growing, right? Because we can plant 15 billion trees, but the question is how many will survive? You know, that's the biggest question. Yeah,
we never go back to circle back on that particular aspect.
Exactly.
Now you see, when it comes to the conversation of the youth in regards to how they can get opportunities, or they can be like highly part of the conversation. In 2015, we saw many organizations, especially those in connected to climate change, saying that the youth should be involved in policy making, you know, advocacy and the like, right? And that was a very strong push. Now we are in 2024, and now yourself, you know, you have an organization, and now you're part of the conversation, and even the conferences and policy and advocacy are the same. So what is now the difference? What has changed, and what kind of improvements have you seen from that time to this moment?
Well, I mean, youth engagement it's getting better, but again, it's not enough in terms of being engaged. Because I think, of course, right now we're at the table, right? Like, you can be at the table, which is great, you know. We're getting invited to conferences, we're speaking, we're sharing insights. But now the question comes is like, the gap is, okay, now that we're at the table, are you actually taking what we're saying into account? You know, there are two things. I can be at the table, I can speak. You can just say, the youth spoke, tick, you know, that's good. So I think we have moved from not being on the outside, but now we're kind of in the inner periphery. We're not there at the meat of it all. Because we can be in meetings, we go to conferences, people share their insights, give ideas and whatnot, but then we're never really there at the implementation. We're not really there to monitor and evaluate the projects, you know. We have consultations with the government, you know, you have consultations.
So you're there to fill a gap, or like
to fill a quota, to know someone can say, I engage a youth, tick, and they feel happy about it.
So what are you guys doing about it?
So those are some of the things we stand up for, because sometimes, even for myself, even when you have engagements with partners, you fight for your space and say, okay, fine, if you want to engage us like this, then there's no point, because also you must fight for that space. And every day we have out of back and forth with partners, engagements. I'll give an example. During the climate summit, we organized the youth assembly, and we had to fight for that space. It was not there, the youth engagement was not there, but we had to fight for that youth space to be there. And that meant out of meetings, out of back and forth. They told us no, but we're like, no, we're coming back. We had to go for engage partners, seek endorsements, find your friends who are championing youth engagement, use them to force the others, you know, you strong arm them as well. So I feel like it's a battle, you know, and I think for us it's more about how do we keep that fire going, because I mean, you can't expect them just to like take you after one try. You must be persistent and keep on knocking the door so that you can actually be heard, because yes, you can be at the table, but they're actually listening to you and taking what you're saying into account.
I see. You know, there's an aspect of tokenism, which is
don't get me started.
There's an aspect of tokenism. So again, like you mentioned, you're having a seat at the table, but you cannot make substantial progress, or let me say advocacy that can be pushed into, you know, further communication that can be something tangible, right? So how do you handle now when some people are like, having the youth day is like tokenism, you know, they expect to be there. You know, how's that conversation going?
No, I would lie. It's a hard conversation, because like of course you're happy to be at the table, you're great there, but the moment you notice it's tokenistic, either, I mean, you call it out straight up, like, this is not it, you know, because unless you speak up, because for them, for partners and some donors and like engagement, they're just like, oh yeah, we had a youth person here, great. So now it's up to us as young people not to accept the status quo. Yes, of course, yeah, they will give you like DSA reimbursement, which is a good thing. You feel, yeah, I've been engaged, I feel great, wow. But the question is, what are you going to settle for? What will you settle for? Because you can't just say this is enough. So it's about like, we keep on pushing and keep on asking, okay, fine, yes, you've engaged us, now we follow up. Because we have meetings with partners, you follow up, you're like, you're also aggressive, you know, because for them, they're like, we engaged, it's done. But if you actually keep on following up with them, they're like, okay, now you're serious, you know? And secondly, also, it's a matter of like showing your value, which I always tell young people, like, also these partners, sometimes they feel like, we were just a young person, they don't know anything. But the moment you show your value and that you're an expert, you know, people are like, oh, okay, I can listen to you. So also we also work on ourselves as a young person to be a professional. Because now we're not just young people, we call ourselves also young professionals, because we are experts in different ways, whether I'm good at climate tech or nature-based solutions or whatever it is, I'm a professional, so engage me as one. So also like, it's a matter of me as an individual also building my capacity to be engaged. Otherwise, they'll just be like, you're just there. So also I tell people it's our burden as well to show ourselves worthy and of value to actually contribute to the conversation. I see.
Yeah. So what kind of opportunities have you seen, you know, while you're at these spaces, conferences, tables? What opportunities are there for young people?
There's a lot. I mean, the good thing, there's a lot of opportunities. I think it's really like the climate space is very big, and I mean, there's no way you can debunk all of it in like an hour. But I think there's a lot of opportunities for, you know, innovation, entrepreneurship. There's so many gaps, you know, in that sense. The opportunities for us to a lot of advocacy as well. A lot of organizations are looking for young people who have great ideas, who have time, energy to give out as well. There's opportunities for you to play your part, you know, no matter how small it is, you know, and I always tell people that small actions matter as well. So like, there's space for everybody in the system, you know. There's emerging conversations right now about like carbon markets. It's a new topic, you know. It's an area of interest. People are talking about
carbon credit selling.
Carbon credits, carbon credits. You know, it's interesting there to get in face. There's a whole talk about, you know, there's a water and climate nexus as well. Climate and health nexus as well. So there's so many opportunities for also people who are not, let's say, quote unquote, in the space to plug in what they're doing, you know, in the climate space. So for me, when I look at it, it's like when you go for these events and conferences, it's like your mind is opened up to see, okay, fine, what's happening around the world? You know, what can you replicate in Kenya that can work here? You know, what can you share with them? What partners can support your work as well? So I think there's a lot that can be harness from the system, I would say. Yeah.
I see. You know, there are also very many young people who have different organizations that deal with aspects of climate change. Yeah. And I think before we even look deeper into that, we want to look at the integration of young people who are in rural places and also urban settings. You know, because there's a disconnect. And there's a disconnect because, you know, someone who is in a rural setting, they feel the adverse effects more than someone who is in the, you know, because you can maneuver in the urban setting and the like. So sometimes they do not feel represented in the way that they should be, and there's over-representation also when you come to these conferences, you know. So I think what I would ask you is, where are the voices of these young people who say, okay, I have to walk, you know, I have to sit in an open classroom and there's insane drought, I'm suffering heat exhaustion, you know, which is to them, they not even call it that because they're so used to that kind of adverse life. That for them it's a day-to-day thing, right? So how are they integrated into this whole conversation and to the table?
I mean, it's definitely one of the biggest challenges as well, about how do we ensure that everybody is part of the conversation, especially bridging the divide between urban youth, rural youth, marginalized communities, even indigenous young people who are, sometimes they are facing the brunt of it. They don't know these concepts, you know. And of course, the system in its nature, even in Kenya, I have to admit, the system is made in a sense that it only allows a certain type of people to participate in the conversation, you know, and quote unquote speak on their behalf, you know. People will say everybody has a voice, you know, and it's an opportunity for us who are, let's say, in the space to create those platforms for them to have a voice. So even I'll talk about K24 one of the models that we're trying to implement is by
your organization.
K24, just to kind of localize it. You know, we have ambassadors across the country. We're trying to see how do we ensure that everybody is represented, even at the grassroots level. Therefore, we just don't say, okay, yeah, I will speak for everybody. No, we have people who are on the ground who actually understand the experiences, because the worst part is if I go speak with someone who's in Turkana, I can't, you know, because I understand them. So you need to get someone who's in that space. How do you build the capacity? How do you help them engage? How do you debunk some of this concepts for them? Therefore, they can actually engage with themselves. Because also the goal is not for us to engage on their behalf, but how do we enable them to engage for themselves? Because I can't share a story of walking to school because I've for miles, I can't share that story because I've never experienced it. So how do you empower that young person over there to be able to share their own story? Therefore they're hard in the spaces. And for me, it's like we need to open the doors. Keep opening the doors. My friends always tell me, open doors for other people, because unless we're all at the table and everybody's sharing their experiences, we can't move. So,
I see. All right. Well, then with that, we're taking a short break. We'll be back with more of this conversation. Stay with us.